Everyone. Welcome to our grand finale. We're going to go out with a bang. We've got two fabulous speakers today to share with us and to lead us at a discussion. John Greenbaum and Marcus Ebenhoe. I'm going to introduce Marcus and he'll introduce John. They're going to kind of do a tag team here for the presentation today. So as you know, we've had during the season of Lent some presentations, some wonderful presentations on the challenges of poverty in this city. We reflected with the church, we've reflected on the city, we've reflected on a lot of issues having to do with this very important topic that we're surrounded by, that we really need to address and really need to deal with. And today, hopefully, we're going to get some ideas about how we further engage in the response of what we do with what we have heard, where we go from here, what is the action that we're called to. So I'm going to just first of all welcome Marcus. Marcus Ebenhoe is on our staff. He's been here for, what, 3 years? Probably seems like more than that, but it seems like a long time. Marcus works on our social ministry committee here. He's been very active in the creation of Joseph's Place, which has become a very vital, important ministry we have here at the cathedral. One of his main jobs, as part of his job description, I think, is to keep us honest here at the cathedral, especially the staff and the rest of the community. It's a very challenging position that he has, but he often reminds us of social justice issues and sometimes areas where we're not even aware of. So I'm very grateful for Marcus for all of that he's brought to us. And he's also expecting a second child any time now, so if he gets a call during the course of our presentation, you know where he went. So, before Mark something, I just want to say, you'll find at each of your tables a blue sheet. This is an evaluation. We're very interested in getting feedback about this year's series that will help us in planning next year's Lenten series. So if you could please take a moment, even during the course of the presentation, I'm sure they won't mind, and fill out the evaluation, place any comments on the sheet, front or back, that you'd like to share with us that you think would be helpful for us in terms of the program and improving the program for next year. It would be gratefully appreciated. And there's a box up here on the first table. If on your way out, you could remember and place those evaluations in the box, we would be, again, very grateful. Marcus, it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Before we begin, I just want to do a few housekeeping things. If you need to use the restroom, they're back in the corner here. Feel free to get up. Also, if you need more food or drink throughout all this, please, this is informal. Get up and get what you need. And as Father said, just please remember the evaluations. We really appreciate your feedback so that we can make this a great opportunity for you again next year. So as we begin here, I know you have food in front of you, but if you don't mind just closing your eyes for a moment and just I'm going to paint a picture for us, hopefully, here. So I want to tell a story. Imagine yourself walking through a park on a spring day like today. The birds are chirping, you hear the bees buzzing, flowers are blooming. You just kind of have this nice leisurely walk, really enjoying yourself. The sun's out. You come along a river and there's some ducks there and some ducklings swimming in the river. And while you're sitting there looking out over the water, you see some splashing. And you're like, what's that? Is that like a big fish splashing around there? What's going on? You look over there a little more, you squint your eyes and you're like, I think that's a hand. And so you quickly throw off your shoes and you dive right in. You swim out to where all the splashing is and you realize there's a little baby there. You grab it, you swim back to shore, you call for help, someone comes running, and you hand the baby to them. Once you get the baby to them, you look out again and you see more splashing. And you dive back into the river again, and you come back and you get the baby, you swim back to shore. By this time, a few more people have arrived, and someone's like, oh, I have a blanket over where we were having a picnic. Let me grab that. So they run, they grab that, they wrap up the babies, help keep them warm. You look out again, another baby there in the water. You dive back in, you get the baby, you bring it to shore, and someone else is there on the shore saying, hey, I was on the swim team when I was in high school, let me go and swim here too. So they join you, you come along, and you got two of you going out, and you find more babies there splashing in the water. You are overwhelmed by this. You don't know what to do. You come back, you keep getting babies, and more people start gathering. A bigger group comes, and people start calling their churches saying, hey, you need to come down here and help. We got this emergency. More people come, and you start splitting up responsibilities. So this group over here, you guys get blankets. You over here, you get food. Another group over there, they are responsible for getting diapers. And so suddenly more and more people get involved. The whole city, the whole community is involved trying to save these babies. You start creating a schedule of who's swimming when to go out to the river and picking them up and bringing them back. This starts going on for hours, for days, for weeks, months, years. And one day after one of your shifts, you realize you have this down to a science. Everything's taken care of. You save the babies. You got people always volunteering to do more. But you sit down on the shore after a long, tired day, and you realize this is a lot of work. This is tiring. And a 6-year-old comes up next to you, sits down, looks at you, and just looks up and says, why are there babies being thrown in the river? And you look at the child and you don't have anything to say because you realize you've been so busy in all the chaos and all the good work that you've been doing that you never took a step back and you never took the time to ask, why are the babies being thrown in the river in the first place? All right, you can open your eyes. So the Catholic bishops have been asking this question for a long time. Since the mid-1800s, late 1800s, they've realized, there's a lot of good works that we're doing. We've been doing a lot of wonderful things, but we have to figure out, why do people need help? Why are people poor? Why are they hungry? Why don't they have jobs? And the church takes this very seriously. They didn't have answers for this. But they came up, in their wisdom, came up with this wonderful idea. It's called, sorry for my scratching here, but 2 feet of love in action. I love this idea of being in love in action. So hopefully you have the sheet here so you can look at it a little bit closer. So there are 2 feet. There is the charitable works foot and the social justice foot. So at the cathedral, we are very good at the charitable works. We've been responding to the needs of the neighborhood for many years. 40 years ago, people were coming to us looking for food, and we joined with other churches to create Meek. And we've also created Joseph's Place in the last few years to help support Meek in their mission. We've created Mary's Place to help the refugees. We have All-Star Scholars that helps the kids with tutoring. We have Matthew's Crew that helps kids during the summertime when they don't have any place to go. We have all sorts of different ministries. That's just a few of them there. So we do the charitable works really well. But if you've ever tried walking on one foot, you can't get very far. You just hop around kind of in circles, and you can't really make any progress in the end. So that's where the bishops came up with the other idea of the social justice foot to balance that out. The social justice, that's about getting to the root causes of things. It's about, as you can see on here, some of the examples about expanding healthcare, improving the education system, supporting environmental things, promoting peace. There's a long list. It's really trying to get to the core of why we have these problems. And so we need both of these. And we've been doing the charitable works for a long time. We've been doing them really well, but we also have to remember the social justice foot. The cathedral is part of an organization called Rochester ACTS. It stands for Alliance of Communities Transforming Society. It's a big mouthful, so we say ACTS. And we have been working together with, I believe we're up to 17 other churches in one union to really get to the root cause, to come together and really start figuring out why our baby's being thrown in the river. John Greenbaum has joined us here today. He is the organizer for Rochester Acts and has been doing organizing in Rochester for 10 plus years. And if we could just invite him up, he's going to lead us through a little exercise here and really help us dig into this a little bit deeper. So if we could, yes.
Did you say other churches? Are you talking about other Catholic churches or other denominations?
I believe 7 of them are Catholic churches, and the other ones are other denominations and other faiths as well. So if we can invite John up here. Thank you, John.
It's a harrowing story, the parable of the river. But I love, you know, one of the great things about doing this work is learning from all the various denominations. And when I first heard that story, I knew that was exactly what we needed to be using as a tool to better understand how we can address some of the problems in our community. So Rock Acts is really, really proud to have the Cathedral community as one of our affiliate organizations. And we know that as we build, we can be doing some great stuff to help our community become a more just place. How many people here were involved in the listening campaign? Anybody? So, all right. So we got work to do. There's lots of room for improvement. And we're not alone here in Monroe County. We're part of the Gamaliel Network. And the Gamaliel Network is all over the United States, in, I believe, 17 states. And we've got affiliate sisters in Buffalo, Voice Buffalo, Niagara Falls. There's NOAA in Syracuse. There's Syracuse Acts. Or Acts Syracuse, and on Long Island there's Lion. So we're not alone. We're tied into groups all over the United States. And we just got done meeting in Pennsylvania 7 people who are involved in congregations in Monroe County and are part of Rock Acts. Went down for a week long, actually it was 7 days in Pennsylvania for a training. And they met people from all over the United States, Detroit, Chicago, Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina. And they dug into how to make their communities better places. So there's going to be another national training in August. So just a little, I want to put that in your ear. So that folks who might be interested in getting better at this work, you're invited to talk to us about being one of the people that goes for a week-long training in August. So let's look at the parable of the communities and look at what those 2 feet look like in our community. So I'm going to invite everybody to look at the community problem-solving matrix. And this kind of goes a little deeper into what that looks like here in our own community. So, as Marcus said, we have all sorts of ministries in our various congregations. And let's put a name to that. Let's call it direct service and charity. And let's be very clear that the outcome is that the immediate needs of people are met. So we are succeeding when in our outreach, in our ministries, to meet those immediate needs. But let's also be clear that it doesn't change the power structure, right? We need to be equally clear about both those things. And it provides immediate short-term relief. And the role of the community is to be the recipient of the services and the assistance. And so there's other ways that we can help the community. Now you've been involved in development work. You've looked around in the community and said, and Marcus has worked with people in the parish to ask, what are the gaps in services? What are the areas where people aren't having their services met? And that's That's development work, right? So the outcome is that more resources enter the community, and then community improvements occur. Now, some people might be left out, but you're filling gaps in the community. You're building institutions that continue to help people. Now, you might have some impact on the power structure and the root causes. There might be some moderate, and the community does participate. They're consulted about what kind of problems are in the community. But who's in charge? It's the community leaders, the institutions, and the professional experts, right? It's the folks who are not impacted by the issues, for the most part, typically. Of course, there's exceptions that are involved in coming up with these programs and institutions. And let's keep going down. So now let's ask the question, who's pushing the babies in the water? Why are the babies being pushed in the water? And that's where we take the first step towards social justice into advocacy work, right? So at this point, in this approach now asks, what about the system needs to be changed, right? Who is the person responsible for making the decisions that lead to babies being pushed in the water? So now we've started to take a step on the other foot. And this could mean legislation is passed, community members participate in this, and they can learn the tools to make change. Does it change the power structure? Well, frequently it has quite an impact on the power structure. Sometimes you can actually change the rules of the game. You can flip levers of power so that policies are changed. And you can have medium to long-term impacts on the system, right? But what's the role of the community in an advocacy model? The role of the community is to be the subject of the study, right? Sometimes it's slightly participatory. But what differentiates advocacy from organizing is that the folks who are in charge are not the people who are impacted by the problem. So I hope that helps you think a little more clearly about different ways to approach community problems. So this is a doing for the people. This is acting on behalf of people who are in need, who are being ground up by a system that does not concern itself with justice or the people who are impacted by decisions. The final category is the organizing category, right? So again, we're taking the social justice step. So the community, in this approach, the folks who are leading it are the folks who are impacted by the problem. And advocates might be available as consultants, as helpers, as allies, but the people who are impacted by the issues are the ones who are driving the structural change forward and are at the lead, taking the lead on this approach. So this changes the power structure insofar as the folks who have been helpless and have been having history done to them, right? They're the folks who now have agency and are agents of history. And that addresses the long-term root causes as well. So we've got 4 categories. So I've done a little presentation. Now let's go into some active learning. So let's apply what we just learned. Flip the page over. If you're one person at a table, I'm going to invite you to go to another table and join a group. And let's take 15 minutes. Let's take 15 minutes to... No, actually, before we do that, let's take questions. Any questions or comments about this matrix? Any thoughts, responses, feelings about it, thoughts about it? Yes?
I got the direct service, but could you give us a real-life example of the other 3 where that's happening? Or
Yeah. Okay, so direct service is clear. Community development, so we've got the, well, I was at Action for Better Community for quite a while, and we had a planning and development department. And so every year the planning and development department would talk to people in the community and ask what are problems that people are hearing in the community and what are gaps in addressing those concerns. So then one of the things that while I was at Action for Better Communities, they came up with something called Focus, which is a program where people who were out of work or frustrated where they were in their lives got together and work on those things that were obstacles for them to get back in the workforce, to get their lives on back. And people were saying, I need a GED, or I need a vehicle, or I need to figure out my relationship because this guy is just keeping me down. And so people worked on the internal challenges in their immediate lives and got the tools. So that was the creation of a program. So we've got Rochester, Monroe, API, our MAPI is currently looking at how to address poverty. I'm going to express my ignorance. Did you guys, was that one? Okay, so there's a region-wide initiative to look, and they're looking at how to coordinate services, right? So that's development work. And then also the IBM, the city brought in IBM to look at, and they said, well, we're doing too many programs. We need to be more outcome oriented. We're just thinking, too many agencies are thinking in terms of programs. So those are community development ideas. So advocacy, so Rochester Acts is currently mostly in the advocacy column, row. It's not a column, it's a row. So we worked on childcare. Did anybody sign a childcare postcard? Yeah. So the folks who signed the postcard, anybody signed the postcard who was impacted by, no, let me ask the question. Who signed the postcard and is not impacted by the child care subsidy issue, right? So we're advocates. We're acting out of empathy for those people who are facing that challenge. So we were advocating for changes in our community around child care. But, my kids are grown, and they haven't had kids yet. So totally, it's just I'm empathizing with people. So that's advocacy. And then organizing. So the organizing part of the advocacy campaign was talking to parents and talking to child care providers and bringing them to the table and having them, helping them create the opportunities to tell their stories to the media, and to have them help us shape the campaign. So I would give us a C- on that. We didn't do very well. We need to do better to involve people who are impacted by the issues. So that's a challenge for our growth as an organization. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes?
This is more of an observation, which is that at different times we may switch into different boxes.
Yeah. So say more about that.
Well, it's not necessarily always clean cut. We do one or the other, but we may morph a little bit. For example, I used to work for Flower City Habitat for Humanity. Well, we did some advocacy, we did some organizing, we did community development, but at different stages in the work, we were in a different box.
Right.
Part of it was also trying to get the residents, they had to help build their house. We didn't just do it for them.
Right.
And then they had to help someone else. And like I said, these boxes are lovely and clean, but it doesn't always work that way.
So let's keep going with that. It's a beautiful example. So Habitat for Humanity creates opportunities for people to have stable housing. And my understanding is Habitat is about home ownership, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, so where would you, so the idea of helping people own their homes, what impact does that have on the power structure or the system that results in lack of opportunities to own homes?
Well, there's a lot of advocacy for grants
Okay.
that allow some of the changes that need to be made in neighborhoods so that we can come in and really help build a neighborhood rather than just be house here and house there.
Beautiful. So that's advocacy for changes in public policy that address the lack of affordable housing in our community. So there's an example of people doing direct service or self-help. Actually, I used to have a fifth column, which is self-help. So, you know, Habitat Humanity has a self-help component in there and the sweat equity component. So that's beautiful observation that these are fluid categories. And people frequently, when I do this workshop, people like to point out that they like to see how the lines are fuzzy. Of course, I like to emphasize, okay, yeah, but let's focus on knowing which lane you're in. So yes, they're fuzzy, and you can change, and they're fluid, but it's also, my job here is to help you understand which lane you're in when you're doing the work. Any other questions or observations?
An observation of the Habitat homes. My criticism is they build too many in one little area, like Josana, Ross Creek, Josana area. There are too many there. You're putting more densely populated areas of people with need. I don't think that's good. You should, those Habitat homes should be all over suburbs and in all the city neighborhoods, not just concentrated on the neighborhood.
So a great example of how we can challenge service providers to think more deeply about the impact on communities. And so this is a productive tension that we can have. And so if you were to actually campaign to challenge a service provider to think differently, you could actually be, you know, what would you be in? You'd be in an advocacy mode, or maybe you'd be in an organizing mode, right?
Yeah, right.
Other comments or observations, or should we move on to the exercise? Yeah, Paige.
I just think a lot about the city council and the county, how they're run, and how they don't give the services that are needed to the low-income families. Instead, they're propping up corporations and giving tax breaks and building luxury housing and a marina. And I think that the people that are entrenched there in the government, you know, the Democrats in the city and the Republicans in the county, that a lot of people don't vote because they don't feel it makes any change. And I think voter education and organizing to be heard by the city. So you're not going to vote these people back into office if they just continue propping up their friends and their unions that give them donations for their campaigns.
So you've just described, did everybody hear? You just described the current power dynamic. I don't think too many people in this room would disagree with your characterization of the current structure of how power operates in Monroe County, right? So the challenge for advocacy and organizing is, what are ways that we can open up that current power structure and the decision-making process? What are the ways that we can make it more inclusive and more responsive to people in the community? Because certainly you've described a perception that the system is not as responsive as it could be, right? And that power tends to close the door behind it. Okay, should we move on? Let's do that. All right. So would somebody like to read the scenario? I need a volunteer. Not it. Thank you.
Maria lives in Syracuse. She has 3 children from ages 3 to 12, and they are all suffering from bad asthma. She thinks the asthma is caused by the large numbers of trucks that are coming down her street to a garbage processing plant down the street. The plant is open 7 days a week and spews huge amounts of pollution into the air. How would you solve this problem using the 4 problem-solving approaches below?
All right, so I'm going to ask you folks to each table take one of these, just one, and in the next 15 minutes talk about either one approach or several approaches that you can all think of, right? So one person is taking notes. You have those little golf pencils there? I've got pens over here if you want pens. And one person's taking notes, and one person's going to report back to the group. And so in your table, you're going to need to, or should I assign it? Let's see, how many tables? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, so I'll do this. So these 2 tables, you guys are the direct service tables. All right? 1, 2, 3, you're the development tables. And 1, do you two people want to join that table back there? Okay, so 1, and then back there, 2, you're the advocacy tables. And then the 2 tables in the back, you're the organizing tables. So we're going to do this until 11, let's just do 10 minutes, 11:10. Okay, I see some really productive conversations. People are really engaged. So let's bring it back. So this felt really good. I've got to say, hi everybody. Thank you. Thank you. I said, yes, gentlemen's going like this, right? So I am really happy that I'm having a hard time to pull you back. Right? My job's hard, but I gotta say, walking around this room right now, this is like a high point of my week, right? Just hearing people digging in to thinking about social change, right? That's just, to me, a beautiful thing. So, I was going to ask, what do you think about the exercise? Let's just dig right in. So let's have people, let's see how efficiently we can do this, right? So it's 11:10. Let's see if we can do this in 15 minutes. There's, what, 8 tables? Something like that. So if every table takes 2 minutes to report out, that would be pretty efficient. So while you're listening to other people, think about how you're going to organize your thoughts to do justice to the conversation at your table without getting lost in any of the weeds around the conversation. But do justice to it. Please let other people in the room know what you came up with. And then we'll come around to some of the nuances, some of the things that you discovered in the process of doing this exercise. So why don't we start over here? Which row did you guys work on?
We are the development row.
All right.
What we found a little difficult because we kept wanting to bounce around to some of the other ones or trying to figure out what fits in where. But we talked about trying to get other people in the community to sign on. So get signatures, go door to door, hear to other people to find out if other people are having these same problems, if other kids are experiencing asthma, finding out what other health problems they might have, figuring out other data around this problem, maybe asking some colleges or universities or experts about really doing a test of the air to see if it truly is the air that is causing these problems or if it's not something else. We talked about to see if kind of who the people in power are, who owns the dump, who owns the trucks that bring them there. Try to brainstorm some other ideas. I'm not sure if it fits in this one, but about changing the route so they're not on residential streets or other things. And also looking for grants to see if our community would qualify for a health-related grant so kids can get better access to health care or something like that.
Okay, so you guys really did do an excellent job of bouncing around. So I will, I'll try to positively spin what you got right, and then, but you did many things in other rows, right? So asking who owns it, right? So now you're starting to think about, let's solve the problem, right? So that's the justice foot. So that could either be advocacy organizing, right? So that's a question you ask yourself, who owns it, when you're about to take a justice step. So that's not in development. Great advocacy and organizing idea. Measuring it, right? So if we're going to measure pollution in our community and there's no institution that does it, that could be an institution, that could be development, right? So we want to know what's in the air, thank you, right? What was this point about roads? The route. Right. Okay, so now you're in problem-solving mode, right? So now you're going upstream, right? Who's pushing the babies in the river? Again, the justice foot. So that would be either advocacy or organizing, right? And the difference would be who's doing that work. Grants for healthcare, right? So creating more resources for the community solidly in the development models. Excellent, excellent. And right, it's hard. You want to jump around. Okay, you guys.
Okay, well, I think we jumped around a bit too, but we talked involving the EPA, watchdog groups.
What was your row?
Direct service.
Okay.
Testing the air involving local, state, and county government. Having them drive electric trucks. Rerouting the trucks and finding out the zoning information for the area and a way to keep them from emitting the toxic fumes and purifying the air in the neighborhood.
Well, I'm really happy that you guys are so focused on changing the dynamics of the community. But you are not helping the immediate needs of Maria and her children, right? Direct service is about the immediate, what are the immediate needs that Maria has? The kids have asthma, right? So none of those things were helping those kids with asthma. So excellent points about advocacy and organizing. So I'm very encouraged that the room it can't keep itself away from advocacy and organizing. I love that. This table.
We were direct service. Our first thought was to get the kids better medical care for what their problem is.
Right. So better medical care. These kids have asthma, so they need inhalers. You know, is money a problem? Is there insurance? Right. How do we help these kids breathe better? Get their immediate needs met.
Yeah, we were talking about maybe getting visiting nurses involved, social services maybe. If it was so severe that maybe there was, the children's health, or maybe lives were threatened because the asthma was so severe, maybe finding them some temporary housing.
Right. Right, actually moving them, right? Beautiful. These are direct services, yeah. An immediate need is met. Great. And this tape of ladies?
Development, and we started out like Marcus, we said we were going to talk to the neighbors and see if they had the same problem as first thing, and we were going to complain to the city and ask the help of medical professionals to look into it. And then we said we were going to contact the medical professionals, get these people all to sit together, ecology people, city officials, garbage processing plant officials, and the neighborhood people to tell their problem to these people. And then we thought these community people would move the problem on to advocacy.
Okay, so going to the neighbors, right? You're going to the people who, you're almost like you're doing the organizing. You know, so
find out if they have the same.
So that's basically anytime you're organizing, you're checking the water. Who else is impacted by this issue? Who is on our team to help us think through the problem? Going to medical professionals, asking them, you know, what could we change in the community? You know, what's needed here? So if the medical professionals are starting to address gaps in the service provision in the community, now that's development work, right? And you guys were doing development also, right?
No,
yeah, Fred? Yeah.
Yeah, so we had, we talked about getting some of the local doctors together and to just evaluate medical concerns, including asthma, of people in that area. And then we talked about coming up with a commission to study air quality in the city.
Right. Right. So there's no institution studying the air quality. We've got to build this institution. That's development work. You know, identify the gap in services or programs. Excellent. All right. Next table.
Our group is advocacy.
Yes.
And a lot of this is the same as what we converged on. But we have 4 points. One, Maria needs help, and we thought she should go to see her medical community first to talk about the asthma problem with the medical community. And with them, maybe they would get a city legislator to come in on it because it's a city street. And it also, there are 2 things. One is the trucks down the street, and the other is spewing large amounts of pollution at the plant. So there has to be a group of people. One person can ever address an issue like this. All right, and then after they're organized and they get the facts, then they would go to see the garbage plant people to sit down to the table to see what needs to be changed. And one person here mentioned maybe just the entrances need to be changed, maybe the type of truck needs to be changed. But then the very last thing you said before you ended the discussion was maybe it's not the spewing at all, maybe it's something in the house because it's substandard housing, so a lot of investigation needs to be done, but there definitely needs to be more than one person advocating for this problem.
And so many of those things are at the research level, right? Identify the causes. So before you can develop what we call cutting the issue. Right, so you know, is the issue that we need to change the entrance and reroute the trucks, or is it that actually it's just a correlation, not a cause, and there's something else in the contractors who built those homes did something, right? Or there's a river nearby and there was a flood. Now so who knows? But so in advocacy. So as advocates, are you engaging the people who are impacted by the issue? No, you're acting on behalf of them, right? So that's how, or conversely, you'd be moving into the other row if you were recruiting folks. Yes, you guys, yeah, moving.
We were also in advocacy.
Oh, right.
And we were looking, first of all, in the documentation of the problem.
Cool. So the letters are the actual tactical. So you've got a bunch of things there. So here's where we get to talk about strategy and tactics. So the strategy is sorting out what's the cause and effect, right? So that's your research, your beginning phase. And then depending on what you find out, if it's the roots, then so tactically then it would be, one tactic could be letter writing around roots. Or another tactic would be around adherence or compliance, right? So sometimes it's not that we need new regulations. Sometimes it's just to get folks to adhere to the current regulations as they're written. But not stopping there, right? So if this is happening in this community, where is it happening elsewhere? And so now it's not just a campaign, a local campaign, now it's a movement. Right? So we saw that with Trayvon Martin and Ferguson, right? So Black Lives Matter started as individual incidents, and now it's nationwide, it's a movement. And now it's a way of thinking, it's a habit of mind for Americans to be thinking in these terms. And the last two tables, you guys in the middle?
So we were organizing, and so similar to some of the other comments, the first place we would start is documenting the problem, both the health problems and then also to know whether or not the landfill is operating in compliance with code. And then once we know what the problems are, we would approach the company directly and just say, here are the problems. We expect you to do something about it. What will you do about it? And if we're satisfied, then, that's good. If we're not, then we would take it to the next level and reach into the advocates and the legislators and the regulators and politicians and whoever can help us to, again, get them to put pressure on the company to find a solution. And if all else fails, then potentially bring on a lawsuit against the company and engage the community in doing so.
So, and the key there is who's we, right? So we is the impacted neighbors in the neighborhood, right?
Yes.
So you were...
We would be the community itself.
Right.
Some leaders in the community, I guess we assume we would be the ones who would be the organizers, the leaders organizing the community, but engage the community through multiple processes. Again, approaching the medical community as to what the problem is. Is this more than just one particular incidence of asthma? Again, is it correlation or causation? As you mentioned, what are the problems both in health as well as from the regulatory side? Is this company operating in compliance? And then from there, build community support.
So frequently a court strategy is employed, one of the things I've learned in the last 10 years was just the incredibly brilliant long-term strategy of the NAACP for desegregating schools in the United States. It was Brown versus Board of Education was 1954, but they started that legal strategy in the 1930s. They sat around a table in the 30s, 20 years before, and said, how are we going to do this legal strategy? And of course, it was combined with grassroots organizing. So, yes, last table in the back. Yes? You're workers. Okay. Well, excellent, excellent. So
No, why doesn't she move?
So what would that be? If she got help to move, would that be organizing, development, direct service, or advocacy? Right, it would be, right? Yeah. So it helps her kids, but it doesn't change the situation for the other people in the neighborhood, and it doesn't change it for all the other neighborhoods in that state where maybe it's a compliance issue and the regulations aren't being enforced. So let's wrap this up. So any thoughts about the exercise or the process as you were having conversations that we didn't get to as we went around the room? Covered it pretty good? Yeah.
I think that's one thing that came up in our group group was just how many different ways you can approach the same issue and how topics sometimes that seem easy really are very quite complex.
Right, right, and so right, and so let's stay on the challenges part. So I was talking to you folks in the back, and you were talking about, okay, so if we're doing organizing, a lot of the people who are impacted by issues are just struggling and are drowning in the day-to-day challenges of what they're facing. So how do we reach out and engage people who are just trying to keep their noses above water? And I told the story of a group down in Brooklyn and the Bronx and Queens called Make the Road. And they work on immigrant rights. They provide legal services. But yet, when anybody comes in for services, they get signed on as, you know, a warrior for the cause. So if you go to a rally, even on housing issues in New York State, on a whole variety of issues, Make the Road has hundreds and hundreds, sometimes thousands of people turn out. And when there are interviews on TV, it's the people who've come for services that are the spokespeople on these issues. And they're at the table with the organizers that Make the Road, planning the campaign or working with other groups around New York City. So there's ways to mix these models. The other thing, so the flip side of, you know, it's difficult, and Maslow's hierarchy, you know, it tells us that it's difficult to attend to large public policy issues. But the flip side of that is the people who are impacted by the issues are the ones with the fire in their belly, right? I can go home and turn on Netflix, you know, but when people are impacted by issues, and they're fighting for their lives, and so there's a different flavor to their participation in the struggle. So Rochester, so this point you pointed out about it, it's complicated and we have to think deeply. Rochester acts as 3 task forces, and I want to invite people here. And who has the clipboard? So let's make sure the clipboard gets to everybody. If you've not signed the clipboard, this is your opportunity to get involved. We have an education task force, which is currently taking the lead on the child care subsidy issue. And we have a poverty jobs task force, which is looking at like who's going to get to do the work in a gentrified neighborhood on the west side. And we have the criminal justice task force, which is dealing with police-community relationships and problems and some of the solutions to those problems. And so those 3 task forces right now are looking at what are the ways that we can cut the issue? We call it cutting the issue, and that's like do the research and figure out what is the lever that we can change. And then we have to think strategically. Who has the power to give us what we want, and what are the tactics that will convince them that this is the right thing to do, right? So that's the campaign strategy. And that's what we do. And the door is open, you know. We were powerful with the child care strategy. We were able to help make sure that the county executive candidate race had child care at the center of the issue, right? We pushed that issue from the margins. We helped push it from the margins to the center. And we got everybody to weigh in on that, every candidate. And we got guarantees that they would continue to be weighing in on it no matter who was elected. And they would stay engaged on the issue. But we can be more powerful, you know. So we've been around a little while. I've been on the job for 8 months. So we're only as powerful as the people in this room putting their shoulder to the wheel and so we're your tool for advocacy and organizing. ROC Access is Cathedral Community's tool so if when you want to get on that social justice foot, we can, you know, we're an opportunity for you to make that happen, right? So how does that happen? Getting involved with the task forces, coming to our huge public meetings, coming to activities and actions, and press conferences. So, yeah. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can we just give John a round of applause one more time? Thank you very much for coming today. And can we also acknowledge our volunteers who have been here for the last 5 weeks, feeding us and setting everything up and making sure this all runs smoothly. Thank you so very much. Once again, if you could remember to drop off your blue evaluations in the box right up here, we'd appreciate it. And everyone have a wonderful rest of your Lent. God bless.